with another episode of Family Heritage Stories. I'm Nicea DeGering, and I'm sitting down today with Kaytlin Mangelson. Kaytlin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I want to start right at the beginning with you. Tell me where you grew up.
So I grew up in a very tiny town called Burlington, Wyoming. When I was growing up, the sign said 250 in the population. So it's just a very tiny little town.
You made it there. 251.
Yes.
Yes. Siblings.
I'm 7 of 8.
That's a lot of kids.
Yeah. So I come from a big family. It's always a full house. Very fun. My mom's family have lived in Burlington or nearabouts for generations, so there was always lots of family around. Aunts, uncles, second cousins, third cousins. I knew all of my grandma's sisters and brothers. I called my mom's first cousins by aunt and uncle, so very large family.
Tell me what growing up like that was like some of your fondest memories.
Probably the first thing that comes to my mind is our family reunion that we would do every year. Every year we would go up to the Bighorn Mountains over the 4th of July and go camping. And most of the town was up there with us because most of the town was related to this big family reunion. And this family reunion was like 500 people because it was my great-grandmother, her sister, and they married 2 brothers. And it was all of their descendants. So it's just this huge group. And it feels like my second home. Going to the mountains feels like my second home. So, but yeah, I mean, it was a small town. Sometimes I was annoyed by how small it was, but looking back, it was such a wonderful place to grow up. It's just being surrounded by everybody who knew you, they took care of you, they watched out for you.
Did you fight for attention? Did you fight for food?
No, not really. I don't feel like. I feel like we argued, we fought, but I feel like our parents were always giving us all the attention. It's also nice that it was such a small town. So getting to sporting events, it was just a walk down the road. So it's not like they were having to spend all of their time taxi cabbing us around, which probably helped. We could kind of stay at home base and still get around to our activities.
Is that where you got your sense of family? And is family important to you?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I found that for me, extended family is just as important as close family. Like it was just, this is what family looks like. It looks like this huge group. It looks like hundreds of people, and we all look out for each other.
You were who in your family? You were funny, you were the hard worker, what was your title in the family?
I think they would call me the Dodger when it came to work. I was pretty good at disappearing.
Smart. You were the smart one.
It was time to do chores. But also I'm the youngest daughter, so I always really looked up to my older siblings. I always wanted to be like them. In fact, when I was going through basketball, I had Little Howard put on the back of my jersey because that's what my coach called me, because I was the Little Howard after he'd coached 4 other Howards. And I kind of liked that title. I liked being the Little Howard.
What do you remember about your mom growing up?
My mom gives the most enthusiastic high fives. Like
show me, what do you mean?
It was just
yeah,
I would just say something like, "Hey mom, I got an A on my test." And she'd be like, "It's great. Yes."
Oh, she's going again.
Yes. Just very you always felt good sharing good news with my mom because she was so enthusiastic about it.
She's your cheerleader.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She also is an incredibly faithful person. Like if ever something went wrong, she would either just laugh it off or be like, "Well, we're just going to say a prayer and things are going to work out." And so that calm, things will work out, things are going to be okay, has definitely stayed with me from my mom.
And your dad?
My dad, probably actually thinking about this show in particular, my dad is family history. He loved to tell us stories. about his family history, about our ancestors. And we got tired of hearing that because it was all the time. But now I love that. I love that I have those stories and that foundation, and I tell them to my kids. They probably
hate it too.
They probably hate it.
This is
drives them crazy.
This is what we do, right?
Yes.
So tell me about meeting Josh.
So that was kind of funny. So I had served a mission in the Marshall Islands, and I got a job teaching at the MTC, teaching Marshallese. So I had come back, and I had only been home from my mission like 3 weeks. I'd been in Provo 2 days, and a girl that I was in this orientation meeting at work said, "Can I offer you a ride home?" "Oh, I used to live there. I'm really close by." And so she took me home and introduced me to my neighbor, who is the Relief Society president of that ward, and she invited me to come to Ward Sports Night. So I go to Ward Sports Night, and Josh was there, and somehow I misunderstood, and I thought Josh was dating the Relief Society president because they were working together to plan this activity. So I thought they were dating. So I totally kind of didn't pay attention to him at all that night. Yeah. And so the next day, he came and knocked on my door and invited me on a date, and I didn't realize it was a date. I thought he was inviting me to some like group activity, welcome to the community. And so I almost stood him up. I didn't even know it was a date until he showed up to pick me up and was like, "So the other couple we were going to double with couldn't come, so it's just us." And I'm like, "Oh, this is a date." Totally missed it.
In your defense, you've been on a mission.
Yes, exactly.
You're just getting your feet back under you.
Yes.
And here he shows up at your doorstep. So what'd you think about that first date?
It was great. And actually, I tend to be kind of a shy person. So I figured it was really good that I didn't know that it was a date because I didn't have any time to get myself nervous about it. I just had to go into, let's make conversation like you do with random people on the street when you're a missionary. So that worked in my favor, I think.
What did you like about him right off the bat?
I liked his kindness. Remember the very first time I met him, instead of Ward Sports Night, we ended up going to Wendy's and getting Frosties. I don't know how that was Ward Sports Night, but there you go. And he noticed someone in a table across the way working on some math or computer science or engineering course. And I don't know if he thought he looked stressed or what, but he goes over to this stranger and asks what he's working on and then sits and helps him with his homework. And I just loved that. I thought that was so impressive that he just is very, very kind, very aware of people around him and wanting to help and support, take care of people around him.
When did it turn from Frosty to I could marry him?
Actually, I kind of know exactly the time.
So I want to hear.
Months later, it was around General Conference. I had a mission reunion, and I got a ride from somebody who I hadn't known from my mission because he had left before I came. I got a ride from him. And as we were driving, I remember being so annoyed with this guy because he was so impatient and he was so easily frustrated with the other drivers. I just was remember being annoyed with this guy, thinking he is so different than Josh. And later that week, I had a conversation with my brother, and I was telling him that I was dating someone, and he said, "You know, I think we tell girls the wrong thing when we tell them to look for someone with this earning potential or someone who is a turn missionary or an elders quorum president, or it's like, that's not what you should be looking for. You should be looking for someone who's a man of God." And as soon as my brother said that, I thought of Josh, and I was like, that is who he is. That's who I see. This is just a man of God. And so from then I knew I wanted to marry him. It took him a while to catch up.
When did he catch up?
Not for a few more months.
Where did you get married?
Salt Lake.
And was it magical?
Absolutely.
How many years ago?
That's going to be 11 years.
Congratulations. That is a
11 years
good
this April.
long time. Okay, so then you start having babies. Tell me about your family.
So our first was born just a couple months before we graduated BYU. And so she was just a baby when we moved, and we moved to Michigan. That's where Josh started a master's and PhD program studying robotics engineering. And so we took our little family there, bought a little condo, and
How did becoming a mother change you? Was it instant, like, I can do this, or did you have to like ease into motherhood a little bit?
I think I loved it right away. But then as a few months in, I really struggled with postpartum depression. And that was a hard thing to learn how to navigate and realize this is not because I'm a bad mom. This is not because I'm not good at this or not cut out for this. This is just biology attacking me and I can get through this. But that didn't really come into a head too much until Linnie was born, because our daughter Linnie had so many medical complications that we were in the hospital for a long time. And that's when postpartum depression really kicked me. I was really grateful for Andy then, our oldest Andy, because if I hadn't had a 2-year-old to get up and get dressed and feed breakfast, it would have been far too easy to just stay in bed. But I couldn't, because this sweet 2-year-old needed me. So you get up and you do what needs to be done.
So you have Andy.
Yes.
And then you get pregnant with Linnie.
Yes.
Tell us who she's named after.
She's named after my great-grandma.
And why choose that name?
I've always loved the name. I've always loved Grandma Linnie's story, and it was something that I wanted to honor. And then when we had our first ultrasounds with Linnie and we first found out that there were some potential complications, some potential medical problems, I felt like I wanted the strength of our family for her and for our family going forward. So I suggested Linnie Faith, and my husband was on board and liked that name.
So your other children's names,
Yes.
how did you come up with those?
So our oldest is Andalyn. She goes by Andy, and that was just a name that I heard once and loved. She is Andalyn Joy, which is my middle name, so she's named after me. Then we have our Linnie, and our third daughter, her name is Isla, because I served my mission in the Marshall Islands and just loved the Pacific Island culture and people. We wanted to honor that, so that's where we got Isla from. And Nolan is our youngest. He's named for 2 of his grandparents. He's named Nolan Wild. Nolan is my husband's grandfather's name, and I wanted to name our son that because when we were dating, Josh invited me over to dinner at their house, and I saw the way that Grandpa Nolan interacted with his wife, and they were just so sweet together, so cute together. And I thought, if this is the type of relationship that he grew up observing, he's going to be a good husband. And that's why I wanted to name Nolan.
Does he embody that yet? I know he's only 3, but do you
He's
see?
very sweet to me, so hopefully he will. He's a very sweet boy. He's sweet to his sisters too.
He has a lot to live up to.
Yes, he does. It is kind of funny because we started our girls all have like virtue middle names. We have Faith, Hope, and Joy as the girls' middle names. And then Nolan, we decided let's give him a family middle name, and we came up with Wild, which is Josh's mother's maiden name, so after her father. And it wasn't until later that we realized putting those together, now we have Joy, Faith, Hope, and Wild, which
The
he's
youngest
proved that to be
is usually the most fun.
he has proved that to be applicable many times. But that's just a fun story about our kids' names.
Complications while you're pregnant,
Yeah.
and they continue during the whole pregnancy.
Yeah, so it seemed normal till about 20 weeks. And then at our 20-week ultrasound, they said there might be a problem with her heart. We can't tell. We want to do some more tests. So we came back for more tests, and then they said there's got to be something wrong because she's dropping on the growth charts, and we can't tell why. So then they started doing checks every week, and every week it was like, this might be wrong. This might be wrong. They just kept finding more things that could be complications.
And where are you finding peace in all of that? That's scary.
It was scary. I remember, actually it was my mom. I remember calling my mom when we first found out about the potential heart defects and saying, I just want my baby to be okay. And she said, she is okay. Whatever happens, she is okay because she will be part of your family. whether her life is long or short, she'll always be part of your family. She'll always be your daughter. And the Lord has taken care of everything else. So you can hold on to that she is okay, no matter what problems we're taking on here.
She's born, and what happens next?
So Linnie was born with something called Vacterl association, VACTERL. And each of the letters stands for a body system that can be affected. Basically, it's not a syndrome, it's not genetic. Essentially, it's a group of birth defects that cluster together more than random chance says that they should. So most doctors think it probably happens super early in development. Something goes wrong in the splitting and dividing of cells, and it just causes this cascade of birth defects.
So you have the baby. Josh leaves with the baby.
Yeah.
You don't know yet.
No.
What's happening?
No. And I remember she was born by C-section. I go into recovery. I heard her cry, so I knew she was alive. I knew that she was alive because I heard her cry. And then Josh came in to see me in recovery, and he broke the news so perfectly. It was like he'd taken a class on how to break bad news to your wife, because he just said, she's beautiful. She's really tiny. She has beautiful dark brown hair, just like you. It does look like she has the tracheoesophagus defect that they talked about before, so they're going to transfer her to the children's hospital. But they're going to keep her here tonight, and she's doing just fine right now. It was just such a wonderful way to be like, it's going to be okay.
And did you feel that in that moment? It's going to be okay.
Like, we've got this. We can tackle this.
Tell us about her life, about the hospitals, about, I'm sure, the doctors.
Yeah, so she had heart defects. She needed heart surgery. She had spinal defects. The biggest birth defect and the one that most affected her life was she had something called a tracheoesophageal fistula. That's where her esophagus, instead of being one continual line down to her stomach, it ended in a blind pouch. And then the part coming up from her stomach attached to her trachea, her windpipe. So there's no continuous path to her stomach to feed her. And she's got this path into her lungs, which is not where you want stomach acid or food or anything. Her first surgery was to detach her esophagus from her trachea and then attach the two ends of her esophagus so that she could actually eat and breathe. But because that surgery is so complicated and the airway was so complicated, that meant that her airway was floppy. So anytime she took a breath, it would just collapse down on itself, and then she couldn't force it back open. And as far as her stomach, it meant that she never was able to tolerate food in her stomach because she'd had such bad acid reflux that it was dangerous to have food in her stomach. So we spent 10 months in the NICU with her. And I'll tell you, initially, we thought, we've got this. We can go do surgery. After a couple months of surgery recovery, it was like, can we do this? There doesn't seem to be an end. There wasn't an end. I mean, the nurses would tell us, you just have to be patient. These cases take a long time. We just had to settle into a normal of every day we drop our 2-year-old off at a babysitter and we go to the hospital. Josh was amazing because he's trying to get a PhD at this time. And PhDs are hard. They're really busy. He had to work really hard, and he still found time to stop by the hospital every day to visit her for a little bit before he had to go to campus.
Feel like you became a doctor yourself during that time?
Yes.
Like I mean, everything you're saying, you know words that most of us don't know.
Yes. Yeah, in fact, to bring her home, the only way that we could bring her home was with a tracheostomy and a ventilator and a feeding tube. So she came home with ICU level care that we had to provide in home. So thankfully I've always kind of been medically inclined. I found it interesting. It wasn't too overwhelming to learn it, and I just learned to do it. I joke that I could be a respiratory therapist or a nurse or an occupational therapist, whatever you want me to do. I could jump in and probably do a decent job because we've had so much experience. Josh is not medically minded, but like any good parent, he stepped up and also learned how to do it, and we just had to learn to take care of her.
What was Linnie like?
So when she was really little in the hospital, we didn't see much of her personality. You can't show much personality if you can't breathe. Once she started breathing, then all of this personality came out. She's very stubborn, very, very determined. If there was something she wanted to do, she would figure out a way to do it, and she'd figure out a way to do it her way. For example, she had this funny little bum scoot that she would do. She would not crawl. She would not be on her belly. She didn't like it. And her physical therapist came up with this brilliant plan that we're going to put a ramp and we're going to put something she really wants on the top. It was actually this owl here because that was her favorite lovey toy when she was a baby. We'll put that on the top, and the only way she can get it is to crawl up the top because she's not going to be able to do her bum scoot and fight gravity. Well, Linnie did. She bum scooted all the way to the top, fought gravity, and still got what she wanted, and kind of looked at the nurses like, try to tell me what to do. I'll do it my way. So very, very determined, very social. She loved to be around people, loved to be around family.
How did you reconcile your hopes and dreams for this baby with what the reality was?
Time. I think in some ways that was something we struggled with the whole 8 years that we had her with us, is that her life would never look like what you imagine. When you find out you're expecting a baby, you have all of these dreams and expectations that you may not even realize you have until they're not possible anymore. But I think we also came to peace of like, we can give Linnie a really good life where she is. We tried really hard and decided early on we weren't going to let her physical limitations or her medical complexity stop us from doing what we wanted to do as a family. So if we wanted to go camping, we'd go camping. We'd figure out a way to do it. We'd figure out a way to get a generator or a battery pack, whatever we needed to power her medical supplies so we could still go. We took her camping. We took her to family reunions. Lots of those family reunions, she ended up sick, and we had to spend a week in the hospital because she got sick, but we felt like it was worth it to her and to the rest of us that we could spend time with family and spend time out and about and not lock ourselves away.
What could she do? What did she like to do?
So it depends what time of life we're talking about. When she was really young, definitely her medical history slowed down her development, but she was catching up. She could talk, she could crawl, she could walk.
What was her first word?
She loved to play. Oh, what was her first word? So initially, because she had the trach, she signed everything. So she signed mom, dad, shoes, socks, pajamas, go to bed, read a book, Andy. Like, she just signed everything when she was really little. And then eventually she was able to use a special attachment that they have for tracheostomies that allows you to use your voice. And she started using some words too and singing songs. She loved to sing songs. Loved Moana. Moana was her very favorite.
I had a feeling that that's what you were going to say.
Yes.
Because I'm looking at what's in front of you.
Yes.
and I see Moana. What is this? Why is it special to you?
So when Linnie was 3 years old, she had a brain injury. She got the flu, and it compromised her airway, and she was without oxygen for 10 minutes. That caused extensive brain damage. So where before she wasn't really physically limited, after that she was confined to a wheelchair. She had very little use of her hands. She had some use of her left hand, basically no use of her right hand. And it was very hard to find toys that she could do because they're just not designed for kids with her needs. Well, we found this at a toy store, and they had a demo out, and we showed it to Linnie, and Linnie fell in love with it. She already loved little figures. She loved their names. And what this thing does is it plays the music for the character when you put it on top. And since it could like magnetize on top and then play her songs, she just loved it. So this went everywhere with her.
Hours and hours of the Tony box.
All the time. Yes. And if it died and the charger died, then we had to get the charger quick or she would be mad.
But it's something she could do.
She could do it. Yes.
So this is her favorite character.
Yes.
Who else did you bring? Who else did she love?
She loved everybody.
Everybody. Okay.
She loved all of them. We liked Coco. She really liked doing Doc McStuffins when she was at the hospital or at doctor's appointments because it was, the doc is in and he'll fix you up. And she just thought that was funny. Daniel Tiger was a favorite, but.
Did you have your moments of like, please stop playing it? or were you, this is something she can do, and the whole family loved it?
Sometimes we had moments, especially when she would play this fun game where it's like, I'm going to turn it on for 1 second, and then I'm going to switch. And then I'm going to say, nope, and I'm going to switch. And we would be like, can we just listen to one for like 5 minutes instead of 10 seconds? But most of the time we just loved it because she could do it. And it brought her so much joy that there was something she could do independently. And
this reminds you of her?
Yeah.
When you look at that, you think of her?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So tell us when you knew that her time was short.
Well, I mean, I think we always knew anytime she got a cold, anytime she got sick, she would get so sick. And we always knew she had this anoxic brain injury. If it caused that much damage to her brain from lack of oxygen, what did that do to everywhere else? Is there damage that we don't know about other places? And we just kind of knew, and honestly kind of hoped that she wouldn't have to live a really long life. We didn't want her to outlive us because we didn't want her to have to go in a home or have our kids have to figure out a way to take care of her. And we didn't want her to lose any more of the quality of life that she had. So after her brain injury, she lost her mobility, she lost a lot of her independence, but she still had enough that she could have joy, that she could have fun, that she could connect with people. And we were worried if she ever got really sick again, she could lose that and not be able to do the things she loved anymore. That was important to us to make sure that she kept that quality of life.
She was how old when she passed away?
8 years old. Yeah, 8 years old. She'd been in the hospital just 6 weeks before. Bad cold that turned into pneumonia. And it was the sickest she'd been in a really long time. And Josh and I kind of had to face like, are we starting a long decline here? Which was a scary thought. It's like we've already done so much and we're so good where we are. It was hard to face, is this going to be a long, slow decline? But 6 weeks later, she was in the hospital again, even worse. And her lungs just, I think her lungs just gave out. I think she was ready to go. Yeah, and so she passed away. We were both there. We were holding her, singing to her, and it was the right time.
Can you share with us that moment, how as a mom you let go?
I didn't want her to feel like she had to stay for us. I really firmly believe that we have some autonomy over, especially Linnie had autonomy over being here. She had ample opportunities to leave, times when doctors said that she was gone, that she was dying, and she came back. So I've always felt like she had some choice and some autonomy over how long she was going to stay here. And I didn't want her to feel like she had to stay for me. I wanted her to feel like we would be okay. If she was ready to be done with this body that couldn't do what she wanted it to do, we would be okay with that. So as I held her, I just tried to just hold everything in so I could just talk to her and be there with her and let her know that it was okay, that we loved her, and that it was okay for her to go. I remember being really grateful that she passed so quickly, that once it was like, this is it was only a matter of minutes, not hours. And I was thankful for that because I felt like As a mom, I can hold this together. I can hold my tears in, can hold my sobs in for this little amount of time that we have, so that she's not burdened with that or feels afraid or anything.
She's a big part of your family. Those cute kids in that picture.
Yeah.
How are they doing?
They're doing okay. They have their moments. We all do, but I think that we've tried really hard to just say, hey, we can talk, we can laugh, we can cry, we can just feel it all, and we just all feel it together, and that's okay. So I've had lots of conversations about what we believe, where we believe she is. And like my oldest daughter, for example, one way that she's been coping is she has a notebook that she's been drawing pictures in it of things that she imagines Linnie could do. So she has pictures of Linnie skiing and rock climbing and scuba diving and riding a horse. And I think that's brought comfort to all of us.
What did you get each of them for Christmas this year?
So they each got a little Tony figure so that they would, like this one is the one that my daughter Isla got for Christmas. Because they still like to pull out this Tony box. It just helps them think of her. Those are the things that they like to do, is they like to cuddle up with her stuffies and they like to listen to her Tony box, and I think that just helps them feel closer to her.
And you and Josh saw the power of the Tony box, and you want her legacy to live on with other children receiving that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so when she passed, we had several family members and friends ask us if we had any particular charity or foundation that we would like people to donate to in her memory. And we decided we wanted to do something personal. And so we thought about children's hospitals, because children's hospitals they're one of my very favorite places. They're this incredible place where it's both a horribly sad, depressing place to be, because you've got kids who are facing pain and worry and fear. Their siblings are facing it, their parents are facing it. No family should have to go through those things. And at the same time, they're these magical, wonderful places, because children's hospitals are where communities come together to support these kids and to support these brave parents. And so you have music therapists, and you have child life therapists and art therapists, and you have community bringing in pizza parties and toys and books and blankets just to support these kids and bring them a little bit of happiness. And we certainly, we have a closet full of blankets that we've received from hospital stays. And this was something that we're like, this is a thing that kids can play with, even if you're stuck in a bed, even if you're hooked up to IVs and tubes, and you can play this. And even kids who have special needs, who have disabilities like Linnie, it's accessible to them. And for Linnie, it was a bridge. She used it as a way to communicate with people that she couldn't communicate with normally. Her very first surgery nicked her vocal cords, so her vocal cords were paralyzed. And so she spoke, but it was in a very, very tiny, harsh little whisper. Pretty much only her family could understand her. But she would use this box to communicate with people and be like, hey, let me show you this cool thing. And she loved that it allowed her to play and interact.
Be like other kids.
Yes. Yeah.
Now you are hoping to raise money.
Yes.
So that all of these hospitals have access to these.
So we started a GoFund Me. Our plan is we would love to give Tony boxes to as many children's hospitals as we can. Our kind of plan is that we would have a set of Tonys similar to what we have here that are keyed to the box that we can then give to the child life specialists at the pre-op department. So when you've got a couple kids who are in to get their tonsils out or in to get surgery, they have this that they can bring into their room as something to distract them and make the waiting time easier. And we'd love to have one for the therapy, like the rehab departments, the PICUs, just the regular floor, anywhere where the kids are that they just need something to play with.
Tell me the hospitals that you are excited to make the donations to.
So we want to do Primary Children's Hospital here in Utah. She spent her last 3 years of care here and just received wonderful care from them and their doctors and surgeons. We definitely want to support Mott Children's Hospital in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Josh and I like to joke we grew up in Michigan because so much of our family growth and who we are as a couple, who we are as a family started there with Linnie's story and our time at CS Mott. So CS Mott Children's Hospital. And we also spent a year in Pittsburgh, the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. If we can, if we're able to, we would love to spread out to more children's hospitals because all children's hospitals are essentially the same. It's what I said about communities coming together to support families going through such difficult challenges, unimaginably difficult challenges. And that just holds a special place in our heart. So we'd love to do nationwide in Columbus, Ohio. That's where my husband grew up. Would love to do Seattle Children's Hospital. That's where we have a special niece who has gotten a lot of her medical care at Seattle. So all children's
You
hospitals.
would love the Tony box to go across the country. All right, if people want to help and find the GoFundMe, what should they do?
So I think that we're going to be putting a link up, but it's a GoFundMe. It's under Linnie's Hospital Treasures. Linnie is Linnie, apostrophe S, and it's her hospital treasures. And they're just the Tony box and her angel deer lovey that were two things that just brought her so much comfort in the hospital. Anytime we went to the hospital, anytime we went to a doctor's appointment, those two things had to come with us.
Anything else I didn't ask you that you wanted to share?
Something about having a medical child, it brings you into this community. It's not really a community people want to be a part of, but anytime we hear of a distant relative or someone in our community or anybody who's going through this, we always want to reach out because it's like, we know what you're feeling. We don't know what you're experiencing. We don't know the details of what you're going through, but we know the world. We know the vocab. We know the pain and the worry and the stress. I think my advice would be to don't let the medical needs or the disabilities define everything your family does. Go camping. Go to family reunions. Give your kid the fullest life that they can have and trust that that's what they need, is the fullest life that they can have with the most interaction with people that they can have.
You did that. Do you have any regrets looking
None.
back?
None. I'm so glad that we did that. I'm so glad that we had the courage to have 2 more kids after Linnie was born because her siblings they always saw her for Linnie. They didn't see her disabilities. I'm pretty sure our oldest daughter, Andy, thought that about 50% of kids have trachs and ventilators until she was about 5 years old because that was her world, 50% of my family. And so her siblings were kids who she could always rely on to just treat her like a person. They would fight with her. They'd argue with her. They would play with her and love on her. And I would never regret giving her a family, making sure she was part of a family, even though it was stressful and scary to have more kids after she was born.
How do you get through each day after what you've been through? What keeps you going? What gets you up in the morning?
Right after Linnie died, I remember saying, such a huge part of my identity, of my focus, of my time and energy has been towards being her caretaker and being her mom. So that was a lot of work just to be her advocate, take care of her medical needs, organize all the appointments. And I wondered, what am I going to do with this hole? What am I going to do with this space? And it was a few weeks later that I felt there doesn't have to be a hole because you can put all of that time and energy and focus back towards your other kids who they always had me before, but now I hope that they can have me to do the things that we couldn't do easily as a family before. Just this last week, we took him to a trampoline park. That was something we never did with Linnie because it wasn't something she could participate in at all. And the kids had a great time. And it was fun to be like, that there's things that we can do now that we haven't been able to do before, that we can build memories and at the same time be remembering Linnie and keeping her alive in our home too.
Did she embody that family member's great-grandma's legacy in her name, and how?
I think so. I think in her stubbornness and in her determination. Those are things that I think of when I think of Grandma Linnie. Like I mentioned before, it was her and her sister married two brothers, and they bought land in Otto, Wyoming to start a farm. And they built a small 4-room house. And the idea was that this house was temporary, that they were going to move into this house while they were building their permanent homes. And then this was going to be like the storage room shed for the farm. Well, that was in 1929. The Depression hit, years of drought hit. The temporary home became permanent home. So 2 families, this 4-room house, and they raised a lot of kids in that house. I think 9 or 10 kids
That takes
were
some
born in that house.
stubbornness.
Yeah, some determination, some grit. And Linnie certainly had that. One of my favorite stories of Grandma Linnie is they had taken out a loan to buy a tractor for the farm, and they'd put their cows up as collateral. And eventually it came that they couldn't make the payments. Cash crops were failing. There was no work anywhere. And so the bank came to repossess the cows. And my grandma tells the story that she and her brothers and sisters and her cousins and her mom and her aunt are all just standing on the road watching the truck drive away with the cows, just tears rolling down their faces, because what are we going to do without our cows? That was their milk, their butter, their cheese, and they sold that for extra money to buy things that they couldn't make at home. It was a big deal. And as the truck came down a hill, all of the cows moved to one side of the truck and tipped the truck. The doors came open, the cows walked home. And the guy who had come from the bank was so frustrated that he never came back to repossess the cows. They kept their cows. And I've always wondered what actually happened with that story. This is from my grandma's perspective, who was a little girl, but I don't know if they were able to figure out what to do with the loan or if the bank just said, we're done with this. But she always felt like, my grandma always told that story as, when you need help, help comes. There's angels that come to help you and take care of you. And we certainly felt that with our family and with our little girl. Many, many times we've had these special experiences where we felt like we had angels taking care of her and helping us take care of her and just keeping her company. And we couldn't always be at the hospital with her.
You keep praying till the cows come home.
Yep.
Yep. That's saying never more appropriate than that story. Yeah. How would you like Linnie to be remembered?
I think the things that I want to remember about Linnie is her joy and enthusiasm for life, her joy and enthusiasm for people and building connections with people and relationships with people, and to slow down and take the time to connect with people, especially if they're different from you, especially if they maybe don't connect the same way that you do. It's worth it. She's just an incredible little girl, and the people who took the time to get to know her and connect with her fell in love with her. She charmed everybody. So that's what I would...
Because you knew her, you've been changed?
Absolutely, yeah.
How would you like to be remembered?
I think I'd want to be remembered as a mother and a wife who tried her best, worked hard, was able to do hard things, and stay positive and stay happy and find the joy in whatever circumstances you're in.
Join the journey no matter how tough it gets?
Yeah.
The bumps in the road have
Yes.
been many, but you've held on.
Yeah.
I like that. Thank you for sharing her legacy with all of us.
You're welcome.
With another episode of Family Heritage Stories, I'm Nicea DeGering.